Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, December 22nd edition of the MMAOB Daily Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin, and I'll be taking you guys through the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. It is Tuesday morning. I was supposed to have Cole Sheldon join me this morning, but he had something come up last minute, so he wasn't able to join me this morning, which is unfortunate because I actually did want to go through last weekend's card with Cole. It was the last UFC card of the year, of course. UFC Fight Night Thompson Neal. So I wanted to go through it with Cole, kind of just go through our year of picks and maybe some lessons we learned along the way, but not going to be able to do that today. I'll hopefully be able to get him on within the next couple of weeks. We have like a break right now, guys. We have a break until the 16th, but I'm going to still do the podcast. So Tuesday and Thursday, that's the current plan, 10 a.m. for the next couple of weeks, even during the holidays. No problem at all. If you guys want to talk MMA with me, I'll be here Tuesday, Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern time. All right, so let's get into it. So I got a lot to talk about today, as always. A lot of news, of course, a lot of fight announcements. And, of course, UFC Vegas 17. I do want to talk about that card and break it down. Also, MMAOddsbreaker.com. I want to plug this article because I spent a lot of time doing it. I went through all the cards from 2020. I went through all the odds, and I found out who the top 10 biggest underdogs of the year that won were. And some honorable mentions. Like I actually had like a top 25 list, but I had to cut it down just it was too long. But yeah, so definitely I'll check that article. I'll show that article on the screen here in a second. But I want to start with UFC Fight Night Thompson Neal because it was obviously the card that took place this past weekend. I'm going to share the screen here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. It's just easier that way. Good old Wikipedia. So let's just go through the card here. Main event evening, Steven. I should mention I went 6-6 in my picks. It's funny, right? Because I actually picked 6 underdogs to win, and 6 ended up winning. I got 3 of the 6. That's not bad, actually. This was kind of a tough night I saw for a lot of people. A lot of underdogs won 6 dogs, like I said. So a lot of people got burned. Just, again, blindly betting favorites, and you can't always do that. So you got to be careful. And, you know, we might as well start with the main event here because this is a fight that a lot of people were kind of just completely like ignoring what Stephen Thompson did in the UFC and ignoring the level of experience, ignoring the 5-round fights, ignoring the fact Geoff Neal has never been the full 5 rounds, and we're blindly betting against him. I'm pretty surprised that Thompson closed as an underdog in this fight. I think that's just kind of ridiculous. The guy is obviously extremely talented. We saw it in this fight. I mean, he looked great. Pretty much dominated the whole fight with his striking from range, which was nice to see. Back to the old Wonderboy. To me, he looked pretty much very similar to what he looked like in the Vicente Luque fight. Very sharp, stay on the outside, didn't take much damage. It was a great performance. He hadn't fought in a year as well, like over a year actually. Thompson's layoff was a little longer than Neal's. So for me, what he did after a year-long layoff is pretty impressive because to me, it didn't look like he had any time off. Like, it didn't look like he had any ring rust at all. So I thought he looked fantastic. Geoff Neal, on the other hand, you know, this is the problem when you give guys a step up in competition when they're not really deserving of it. And I love Geoff Neal. I love the guy. I think he is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I was one saying, hey, give this guy a top 15 opponent, give him a top 10 opponent. It's just weird how he beats Mike Perry last year. It was at the fight. It was last December in Vegas. He knocks him out with a head kick. And at that time, I don't think he was ranked, or if he was ranked, he was like 15th. Throughout the year, he got sick a few times. He had some issues with his health, and he wasn't able to fight. He had a couple fights fall through. And then all of a sudden, he went from 15 to 11. It's like weird how he was going up in the rankings when he kept getting hurt and pulling out of fights. Not saying that was his fault at all. I mean, people get sick. It happens. But it was really strange to me how Geoff Neal went from 15 to 11 by not fighting. I don't really understand that at all. So to me, I love Geoff Neal, but I think, you know, he was a little bit overrated going into this fight. And this is someone who picked him in all 5 of his other fights in the UFC. I'm very high on the guy. I just think that when you look at the level of competition, it wasn't even close, really. And Thompson goes on there and pitches a shutout. So great win by him. He called out Masvidal for a rematch. We'll see if that happens. I feel like Masvidal is going to fight Covington, so Thompson will probably fight someone else in the top 15 if I had to guess. Maybe the winner of Edwards and Khamzat is possible. It's definitely possible. I wouldn't rule that out. Right now, who's supposed to fight Burns, but we don't have a date for that fight yet. Like, it's supposed to happen in early 2021. When, though? We don't know the date, right? So this division's still fluid. It's still moving around. I'll take this comment. Daniel Edwards. Hey, man, what's going on? Thank God for boxing betting. Only thing that made me close this year profitable. MA's too competitive, entertaining. Haha. Well, I agree with you. It was definitely a tough year. I actually should mention this. Like, we got the final tally for the picks. Brian will post it. I barely edged out 60% or 61% or something. So my goal is always to get over 60%. I don't want to be in the 50s by any means. I'd love to get in the 70% of picking fights, but when you pick 456 fights, that's how many fights we picked this year. 456, 6 to the end in a no contest or draw. So out of 450 fights, I think I got like 272 or something like that. Or no, maybe it's a little bit more than that, 274, something like that out of 450. So whatever that is, let me just double check because I'm very open. Yeah, 61%. So I mean, I barely edged it out, guys. Yeah, it was a tough year, Daniel. I agree with you. I mean, for me, I made some great picks this year, especially early in the year. I was pretty hot. As soon as COVID hit and from March to May, we had no fights. When we came back, my picks were terrible. Like I had a couple events in May and June. I think one of them was the Glover Anthony Smith event where I got like 2 or 3 picks right in the whole card, and it just completely tanked me for the whole year. So it is what it is. It is what it is. It wasn't my best year of picks by any means. It wasn't horrible either. Like I was, pretty average, I'd say, for me. I'm not going to go and say I became a millionaire this year during the fights, but it wasn't terrible either. Like overall profitable, but not like a crazy amount by any means. It was a tough year. But the good thing is, Daniel, it's December 22nd. In 9 more days, we have a brand new year. That means brand new 42 cards to pick next year. So we're going to start over again, man. We're going to finish first place in that pick'em contest. I do want to give a shout out to Mike's MMA picks. He won the contest this year. He had a great year, man. I mean, I hit 61. He was at 66. That's a huge difference, 5%. So, I've had 66% in the past. Like we've tracked them for like the last, 8 or 9 years. So I've been up there, just not this year. It is what it is, though. And I'm very open about that. Daniel says you have to beat Thompson or Mai even now. Tough gatekeepers to pass. Yeah, it sure is, man. Thompson, if he's a gatekeeper, I mean, that's a damn good gatekeeper, right? Like he's a tough dude, man. So I'm with you. And you said Maya, yeah, he's another guy. And who knows? Maybe Edwards is going to turn into one. Right now, I still feel like Edwards is a possible champion of that division, but he goes in there and loses to Kamzat, he'll probably be called a gatekeeper by a lot of people. Anyways, co-main event, I got this one wrong. Like I said, I picked 6 dogs in this card, so no shame in that, but I got this one wrong. It was a close fight between Aldo and Vera. Pretty competitive. Like I think more closer than the final scores would indicate, but it was a unanimous decision, and I think that was obviously a good call by the judges. It came down really to the 3rd round, although I thought Aldo actually did enough to win probably all 3. The second one was, the round that most people gave to Vera. 3rd round, though, Aldo got that backpack position and just wrote it out for the win. I don't blame him, man. I mean, it wasn't the most exciting way to win a fight, but he needed to get back in the win column after 3 straight losses. So he gets the win over Vera, and I think that's a quality win. I'm pretty high on Marlon Vera, so that's a good win. Aldo, he called out TJ Dillashaw after the fight, which I thought was a really interesting call out. He's not the only guy called him out. Rob Font, who also fought in this card, called out Dillashaw. So Dillashaw seems to be a pretty popular target, despite not having fought in 2 years and despite having tested positive for PEDs. Aldo was asked about it. He says he doesn't care. He just wants to fight him. He thinks it'd be a great fight for the fans. And I tend to agree, guys. I think it'd be a freaking sweet fight, man. Aldo versus TJ Dilshaw. Dillashaw is, I think, a little bit younger. Not too much younger. He actually might be the same age. Let me double check that. He's 34, born in February 86. Aldo's born in September 86. Wow, Dillashaw's older than Aldo? What the hell? That is so weird. That is crazy. Okay, so TJ Dilshaw somehow like 6 months older than Aldo, which is absolutely insane to me. But anyways, yeah, I think I'd be okay with that fight. He also said a couple other guys, Frankie, Edgar, which we've seen that fight a few times. I know it's a different weight class. That'd be kind of cool, but I'm not really interested in that. Plus, Frankie's fighting Sandhagen. He also said Dominic Cruz, which I think is a great fight because what Aldo said was like, we're both champions. We're both former WC champions. They'd be a great fight for the fans. I think that's the fight I'd like to see, but Dominic's fighting Casey Kenny in early 2021. He's going to have to get by him, and that's a tough fight. It's possible they can still match him up if he loses, but I think he's going to have to win that fight to get this matchup. So if Cruz goes out there and beats Casey Kenny, I think you could see that Aldo fight, and I think it'd be a great fight. I would love to see that fight. It'd be a fun one. Especially 10 years after WC fell. And by the way, I want to get to this comment. Hey, Ballin, the hot. I don't know what's with that picture, but hey, what's going on, man? Next fight here, Michelle Pajay against Chaos Williams. Another swing in the whip for me. I mean, it is what it is. This was a close fight, man. It could have gone either way. I did think Pereira edged it. I thought, it was super close, but I think that guillotine, or whatever it was, rear naked choke at the end of the second round, that probably swung the fight to him. I think it was that close where a finishing attempt like that in a razor-thin round, it probably determines the winner of the fight. So it was a super close fight. I'm sorry, and I was on KS, guys, and I actually had a guy comment to me and be like, dude, it was pretty cool how you weren't biased. You actually did score for Pereira, because I actually did for I made decisions. You guys can see my scorecards there. There's no point of being biased when you're watching a fight. What's the point? Seriously, you want to win your bet. But what's the point of being biased with the judges? There's no benefit to you. And this is, from 10 years of betting on the sport. There's no benefit to watching a fight and being like, yeah, my guy's going to win for sure, knowing it's a close fight, knowing it could go either way, and then getting pissed off when you lose. What's the benefit to that? You're just getting upset for no reason. So, bad judging is part of the sport. I get it. This was not a bad judging decision. This was a super close razor-thin fight. If you call this a robbery, you probably should reevaluate how to watch the sport, because to me, it's not even close to being a robbery. It was a fight that could have gone either way, and I actually think the judges probably got it right in this case. So Pereira wins. He calls out Anthony Pettis. I'll talk about him in a second. I don't know if that fight's going to happen because Pettis is a free agent, and he has some other call-outs. So not sure if that's going to happen, but either way, Pereira, man, he's kind of a tough cookie to crack, man. He's one of these guys where he's got these terrible performances at times, low fight IQ, like when he fought Connolly and Sanchez. And then he looks amazing against Amadiev and Williams. Like, he didn't look incredible by any means, but he got the job done against the guy who was on a nice win streak. So to me, pretty quality win. Next up, Rob Font knocks out Marlon Vera, another upset in this card. Like I said, 6 of them happened, and this was one of them. I really wish I picked him last week. And, you guys heard my podcast, and if you were on it, I did mention a few things like the reach advantage he had and the significant strikes per minute. I just thought that the level of competition was so far in Moraes' favor that he'd get the job done. And he looked okay at first, but again, that chin just gone. You look at Marlon's 3 of his last 4 fights, he's been KO'd. This was to the body, really, but this is not good. He's been knocked out 5 times in his career. A couple of them were like really early on, but still, 3 of his last 4 fights ending in knockout. And here's the thing that's dangerous. He fought in October, got KO'd, and then comes back December, got KO'd. And we were talking about this last week. It was kind of like a flash KO, but I don't know, man. Like, to me, it was kind of a quick turnaround. And he's in trouble now because he dropped a lot in the rankings. Rob Font took his spot in the rankings at in the top 5. So, for Font, it's a great win. But for Moraes, I mean, you look at this recent record, and to be fair, this guy, he's fought killers here. These are all killers, man. But it's a guy that at one point was 4-1 in the UFC, and now he's 5-4. Like, that's a big step off. So at age 32, not super old by any means, but had a tough year, man. I feel like COVID really hurt Marlon Moraes. He said he had a pretty rough case of it, and it looks like it in the cage. Straight wager, Michel is a handful. He's learning to fight a lot smarter as well, it seems. I thought he looked great, man. How's it going, by the way? I thought he looked good in this fight, man. Like, he fought smart. He fought well. Again, tough guy to kind of pick, I think. I think he's a tough guy to get these fights right, just because he's got bad cardio and low fight IQ, but it looks like he's improved those in his last couple fights. So I don't know what's going on with him, but he looked okay. Now, here's the one underdog that I did pick correctly. Marcin Tybura defeats Greg Hardy, and I think a lot of people like to see this. Greg Hardy's not obviously the most popular guy out there. Marcin Tybura, it survives a tough first round. It was kind of a dicey first round. Greg Hardy lands some big shots, but Tybura goes in there in the second round, and Greg Hardy's just exhausted, gets in the ground, just rains down ground and pound, gets the stoppage, wins a bonus. A Font won a bonus as well. Thompson won a bonus, and one guy in the prelims we'll talk about in a second won a bonus. But Tybura, I mean, listen, this is a guy that a lot of people were leaving for dead, because after this run here, look at this run he had, guys. Like, no one even thought he'd probably get another shot in the UFC after he lost 4 or 5. He gets knocked out in 1 minute, less than a minute, by Augusto Sakai in Vancouver last year. And a lot of people, including myself, were like, this guy stinks, he's done. And he's had some bad losses in his career, and then comes back. He's won 4 straight fights now, this year alone. So you talk about guys that have really, improved during the pandemic. He's one of them. He's looked good. I think he is in the rankings now. I'm not saying Marcin Tybura is an exciting guy, because he's not. He's kind of dry to watch, but he's a great gatekeeper, man. He's the kind of guy you need in the division to see how guys like Greg Hardy really do stack up. And in this case, Hardy's cardio and his takedown defense just wasn't good enough. He's not at that level yet. So Greg Hardy, not a top 15 guy, as we saw in this fight. Going through the prelims here, Anthony Pettis defeats Alex Morono. Pretty competitive fight. He gets the decision here. Pettis is a free agent now, so he will test the free agent market. He mentioned his brothers in Bellator. So that's definitely a potential home, I think, for Anthony Pettis. I definitely feel like there's a good chance of him going there, but he did say that UFC is his top choice, and he does want to fight Tony Ferguson in a rematch. He did say that despite winning his last 2 fights at welterweight, he wants to drop down to 155. He also mentioned that he quit drinking recently, and he's really more focused on his game, and he just wants to do really well in the sport now in kind of the latter stages of his career. He's actually only 33 years old, but he's been around for a long time. He's been fighting for a long time, since 2007, so he's been fighting since he was 20 years old as a professional. I mean, that's a long time, and at some point guys do slow down, but you look at Pettis' little run here, it's not bad. Morono and Cerrone, it's a pretty good run post-COVID. And it makes people forget about that loss to Ferrer earlier this year. I mean, that was earlier this year, and no one's remembering about that, right? So, guy looked good in this fight, man. For Morono, obviously a step up. I mean, passed the test. Kianzad and Eubanks, not a great fight by any means, kind of a snoozer, but, it goes the distance, and Kianzad wins the fight. And I got to give her credit. Another underdog that wins here, and Pani, she's only 29, actually. She's been around for a long time. I mean, she's been around since she was 21 as a pro. And I remember her on Ultimate Fighter in Invicta. Let's be fair to her, man. She's won 3 straight fights, and she's actually improving her game. Her boxing looked a lot better in this fight. Again, not the best fight in the world, but it wasn't terrible. And Eubanks, I mean, you talk about fighters that are kind of tough to pick their fights. Eubanks is one of them, man. I mean, you look at this fight with Villa, we all thought she'd lose that. She goes in there, wins, and then back-to-back fights she loses. So very, very difficult fighter to get a read of. She's 4-4 now in the UFC, and 60 fighters cut. It's possible she could get cut, but you look at her Twitter, and it's all like pro-UFC stuff. I think Dana White likes her. Let me get this comment from Daniel. Quote Dana, we need heavyweights and they never cut them. Yeah, I don't think Greg Hardy's getting cut. I'll tell you that right now. There's no way. And Tabura, yeah, he won't get cut either. Even though he's boring, he's not going to get cut because he's winning fights. This fight was interesting. Duron Win versus Antonio Arroyo. Duron wins a unanimous decision. First round for sure, Arroyo won that round. I mean, he was kicking Win in the face with these long front kicks from distance. He was doing damage, but Duron Win somehow at 5'6", this guy is just so strong. He's so small but so strong. 12 takedowns in this fight against the guy who was way bigger than him. I mean, that's pretty impressive. So, was it an exciting fight? No, it wasn't. It wasn't at all because he basically just laid and prayed his way to win. But he did what he had to do. So I can't blame the guy. I just think that a lot of the takedowns he had weren't like quality takedowns. It's not like he was working. You guys saw the fight. You saw it. He would basically Arroyo would land a strike, and Win would duck down and grab his legs and pull him down. I don't blame him. Again, 12 takedowns. Arroyo has horrible takedown defense. I think it was 12 of 16 that he allowed, so it's not good. Straight weight, I mean, listen, you're not wrong. He says, it may sound stupid, Tabura should be in talks for Fight of the Year. 4-0 heavyweight over competitive competition. I mean, I'm with you for heavyweight Fight of the Year. He's got to be in the top 5, like top 3 probably, I'd say. But again, Sergey Spivak's not that good, but he is like a borderline top 15 guy at this point just because that division's weak. Grisham is a terrible fighter. Ben Rothwell's a solid win. Ben Rothwell's a quality veteran. That was a good win for him. Greg Hardy's a pretty quality win. So I'm with you. I'm not saying he's incredible by any means, but, he's had some nice performances, no doubt about it, and the fight against Hardy looked good. All right, next up, Tyler Santos against Jillian Robertson. This one I called UT. This was one I loved. I love Tyler Santos here, guys. You heard the podcast last week. She was one of my big plays, and I loved her in this fight. Just the wrestling and the top position. Jillian Robertson, a one-trick pony, man. She doesn't get your neck or your back. You're going to beat her. So Jillian Robertson, she's definitely dangerous with submissions. That's it, though. Very one-dimensional. Tyler Santos showed really good skills in this fight everywhere, and I was impressed by her performance and a quality dog winning that fight. This fight was another great fight, I think, for Tafon Nchukwi. Jamie Pickett, though, I mean, he fought scared in this fight, guys. You saw it. He was running the whole time. Really weird performance by him. Like, this guy busts his ass to win on the Contender Series. He goes into 3 times, finally wins a fight, and then goes in the UFC, and basically he was walking backwards the whole fight. It's not a good look for him. He probably will get another fight because he's on a 4-fight deal, like a rookie contract, but it wasn't impressive. This dude, though, is a problem. I mean, he looked amazing. He landed 120 significant strikes, guys, in three rounds. And people had question marks about Nchukwi's cardio. And, fair enough because he'd never fought at 185 before, but it looked like the weight cut was fine, and he looked incredible in this fight. I was very impressed by his performance. Didn't get the finish. Pickett had a pretty decent chin in this fight. He's never been knocked out before. So he's a tough dude, but Nchukwi, I thought, looked great. So I thought he looked fantastic. Didn't get a bonus, but I think he was in the running at one certain point. Now, 2 fights left. Let's talk about this one quickly. Giagos and minus just because it was such a weird fight. I ended up picking minus just because he was like plus 300. I was like, I'll take a shot on him. Why not? He ends up losing. Gets dominated. I mean, this was just a lame prey type of fight for Giagos, but I don't blame him. 3 days notice, goes in there and gets the win. It's pretty impressive. Now, this is the fight I want to talk about, though. Jimmy Flick versus Cody Dern. Like I said, guys, this guy is super legit. And I don't know if we'll get a price like that again on him at minus 150. I mean, not against a guy like Dern who's kind of a, I'm not saying he's a bad fighter. He's okay. He's not bad. He's an average fighter. Like, when will we ever get Jimmy Flick at minus 150 against a guy like that's not really on his level of Durden? It's going to be tough. I mean, Durden showed some skills in this fight. It's not like he was completely outclassed. He showed some good skills, but Jimmy Flick, man, you get close to him, you're in trouble. And I think Durden was a little bit too willing to grapple with this guy, and he made a mistake and caught for him. Again, he caught the kick, Flick threw his leg up, and gets his flying triangle choke. This is sick submission. I was at one, actually. UFC 129 in Toronto in 2011. I saw Pablo Garza do this to Yves Drapoint. I think it was the first fight of the card or second fight. It was either first or second fight. I know Ryan Jensen or Jason McDowell beat Ryan Jensen. That could have been the first fight. But I remember this fight, and holy crap. I mean, the first time I seen it in person, it was absolutely insane. So this guy, Flick, does it, gets $50,000. Well-deserved. Daniel says Canto's confident pick, incredible submission defense, and composure. I agree with that. I'm just going to retweet out the link to the podcast because I'm going to do the top 10 upsets now. Right now. All right. Good list, guys. I'm telling you, man. Like, there were some crazy fights here. There were some crazy, crazy finishes, man. Like, and crazy just upsets in general. Like, and the crazy thing about this list we're going to go through in a second here, like, there wasn't really too many bad judges' decisions, which is something you would think would be on a list of, like, crazy upsets. It was mostly just because fighters, like, got tired and stuff. That's pretty much what happened. So, all right, tweeting right now. Good to go. All right, so let's go to that article, guys. Let's do it. Like I said, spent all morning yesterday going through like the whole list. Like it took a while, but it is what it is. Let's do it. All right, so I called it Shana Dobson the top 10 biggest upsets of 2020 because that's who was the biggest upset. It was Shana Dobson. And you guys don't remember that fight. So let's go through the whole list together, guys. And actually, it was pretty cool because I posted it yesterday, and Shana actually retweeted it, which was super cool. She actually saw the article. Her coach, Sean Madden, he follows me, and he had retweeted it, and I guess she saw it, which is super cool. So Shana saw the article. I hope she read it. I hope she liked it. And then, you know, it's not like I was crazy complimentary towards anyone really in this article. I was just real about it. So let's go through the list, guys. First on the list, and by the way, this is all via Circa Sports. So that's Nick Leakus. He's obviously the head honcho there at Oddsbreaker. That's his book. So I was respectful. I used their lines, their closing lines. So if you look at maybe the number you got, or possibly a number that is different from what you've seen, it's because I'm using Circa's odds. So number one upset of the year: Shana Dobson defeats Maria Agapova, UFC Vegas 7 in August, and we all remember the fight, guys. Like, it was a case of, and I said it right here, it's a classic case of a big favorite gassing out. It's exactly what happened. Agapova goes in there, just gets really tired in the fight and gets steamrolled in the second round by the underdog with superior cardio and Dobson. So plus 1150 were the odds of Shana Dobson for that fight. I didn't get that one. I'll tell you that right now. Actually, I think of the top 10, as sad as it is to say, and I'm a guy who picks underdogs like every week, I don't think I even got any of the top 10. Like, these are sharp picks, guys. You got to be pretty sharp, unless you're playing the odds. You're playing on a huge favorite. But in this case, you know, if people made money on this, congrats. I never saw this one coming. But yeah, Shana Dobson, man, you got to give her credit. Biggest upset, not only of 2020, but of all time in the UFC, by the way, 1150. Another huge one, guys. Roxanne Martiferi defeats Macy Barber. This was a big one back in January. And, you know, let's be fair to Macy. She tore ACL in the fight. So it's not like she was completely 100% healthy in that fight. But Roxanne did what she needed to do. She got takedowns, grinded her out, beat her up on the ground. It was a beatdown. The scorecards were extremely lopsided in that fight. It was a beatdown, and, you know, good for Roxanne getting that win there. Plus 650 odds to win that fight. Next up, this was a crazy fight. Actually, this was probably one of my favorite fights of the year because it was so nuts. Trevin Jones defeats Timur Valiev. He was plus 460, Jones. This is at UFC Vegas 7, actually the same card that Dobson beat Agapova. So that card was nuts. This fight was nuts. Valiev, first round, just taking it to Jones. And Jones took the fight on 3 days' notice. He flew from Guam to Vegas on like 3 days' notice to take this fight. Valiev goes in there and just takes it to this dude in the first round. Like, he's going to the body, he's hammering this guy. And somehow referee Chris Taioni, and I know a lot of people don't like this guy, he allows the fight to go on. Third round, Trevin Jones goes out there and just knocks out Valiev, who was tired at that point. It was a crazy win. Again, not one I saw coming, especially the short notice. That's something you got to tick this one off to, too. You know, the short notice, it goes both ways. Yeah, the guy, Jones, coming into this fight, you know, he wasn't training for anyone in particular probably, but for Valiev, it's a different opponent than who he was training for. So you got to remember that these type of short notice fights, they don't go just one way. It's both ways you got to think about from both sides. Now, I should mention that fight was eventually overturned to no contest, but if you had bet on Jones, you won your bet that night. Same with Kevin Kroom, same thing, plus 450, beat Roosevelt Roberts at UFC Vegas 10 with submission. Guillotine choke in the first round. He looked amazing in that fight, but again, suspended for marijuana, and he's been out for a little while now and overturned to a no contest. But if you bet on Kevin Kroom that night, you won your bet. This was a crazy one, by the way. Dale Edwards says, Shana Dobson renamed herself the Parlay Crusher and luckily hedged to win by stoppage, and they had a weird vibe. Yeah, there was a lot of upsets on that card. I was talking about this Cole yesterday. I was like, man, look at all the upsets. But yeah, that fight, man, that was a weird one. All right, next up, Sasha Palatnikov defeats Louis Costi. This just happened. UFC 255 like a month ago. Can't believe it's been a month. Wow. Anyways, yeah, we saw the fight, guys. Again, Costi, this is a classic case of a prospect who's unproven in the UFC, and their cardio fails them, and he gets knocked out. And that's exactly what happened here. Palatnikov, we were all kind of writing him off. We didn't really know much about him based on his record, getting knocked out by Nunes, who's on this list, by the way. But he goes in there and he gets the third round finish over Costi. So great performance there by Palatnikov coming back to win that fight, and he won as a plus 425 dog. So only 5 fights had underdogs winning over plus 400. So that's something to keep in mind. I mean, it's rare. It doesn't happen all the time. It's very difficult. And then you go down, and we have a few in the 300 range now. Julian Arosas won, defeats Sean Woodson at UFC Vegas 4. Crazy fight. You guys saw that fight. Woodson winning the whole fight. But, man, that guy is so skinny for 145. He has no, meat on his bones. And Arosas started taking him to the body, and it eventually finishes him in the third round with the Darce choke. So great finish there by Julian Arosas, plus 385. Andrei Arlovsky, this is the one controversial decision in the top 10. Arlovsky defeats Boser. I thought Boser won that fight, but it was a horrible fight. And at the end of the 3 rounds, I was like, oh, man. I'm like, if the judges go the other way, it's something I can do on this one. It wasn't controversial necessarily in that, it was this horrible, horrible decision. I did think Boser won, but, a lot of people thought that he probably deserved to win that fight as well. And Arlovsky gets the win, and he cashes at plus 335. So, Arlovsky's a guy that a lot of people fade, and he continues to win fights somehow. KS Williams, I don't think we'll see him at plus 315 again, especially against a guy like Morono. We didn't know how good he was, like I say here, at UFC 247, but he goes in there and gets the win in 30 seconds against Alex Morono, and then he knocks out Abdul Razak Al-Hassan. Lost to Pereira, but still, he had 2 wins as an underdog this year. It's pretty impressive. Here's another crazy one. Damon Jackson defeats Mirsad Bektic, knocks him out, submits him in the third round with a guillotine choke. Crazy finish, but again, failed cardio. A lot of these finishes on this card happen in the third round but from failed cardio. And this was the case. Bektic gassed out again, like he does in almost every fight. We saw the fight with Darren Elkins a few years ago. Gasses out, gets head kicked, knocked out in the third round. So a guy with bad cardio, a guy that I think will probably be released from the UFC. I don't think they'll keep him in among the 60 people they have to cut. And finally, the top 10, rounding it out, just under plus 300. Derek Brunson defeats Edmund Shabazian. Again, classic case of failed cardio. Shabazian looked pretty good in that first round. Brunson started taking it to in the second round. That fight couldn't even stop in the second round. Gets stopped in the third round. Derek Brunson plus 295 to win that fight. So that's the top 10. I mean, and again, I actually didn't pick any of these right. I wish I could go in here and say, hey, guys, I got them all right, but I didn't. This fight, I thought Agapova would win. I thought Barber would win for sure. I mean, these are 2 massive favorites, right? This fight was kind of weird because of the short notice, but I still picked Valiev. This one, Roberts, for a while I was drinking the Kool on this guy, but obviously he's not that good. Costi, I didn't really see that one coming either, although the odds were nuts. I didn't agree with the odds. It's not like I bet on Costi, thankfully. Same with Woodson, same thing. I thought the odds were too high. Boser's a guy that I think a lot of us parlayed, not minus 410, which is where he closed at, but a minus 200, because a lot of us thought he'd win that fight. So if you got minus 200, it's not as bad, but still, you lost eventually at minus 410 at close, which is bad. And same with Morono, but this was not a fight I bet on. Didn't get Williams here. Jackson, again, didn't see that one coming. And then Brunson actually did see coming, and I don't think I picked him, but he's one guy I did actually like. So out of the 10, there was only one that I had to lean to, which is obviously not good, but I'm very open with you guys. I'm going to admit my good and bad, right? So in this case, I you guys follow me. I pick almost at least 1 or 2 dogs correctly every card, but not really these huge ones like this. These are rare, and it's hard to pick them right. And I should have mentioned the honorable mentions here. Nicholas Dalby defeats Daniel Rodriguez. That was also kind of a controversial decision. So that was at 255 as well. So, that's interesting. Daniel Rodriguez defeats Tim Means. So he actually had it both ways, but it was, much clearer fight in his direction when he won as a dog by submission. Justin James defeats Frank Camacho. That was, wow. Frank should have probably won that fight. Drew Dover defeats Nazareth Hakparast, and Munar Lazez defeats Abdul Razak Al Hassan, and he was plus 270. So there was a couple of big dogs there, and I want to get to straight wagers comment. It'd be interesting what the odds were for live betting after the first round, some of those fights, because the faves generally dominated first as well. Yeah, it's true. Agapova, for one. Valiev, and what was another one? Bektic, Shabazi. I mean, I think they were all favored going in the last round. Some of those fights, man, that ended in the third round this year where a guy was down with two. Like, I'll give you an example. Jay Herbert against Francisco Trinaldo. I'm pretty sure Trinaldo was like, Grandpa Trinaldo was like plus 1,500 between second and third round. And people obviously bang that out. So if you got that one, good one. But yeah, it's tough to get these big dogs. It really is. But, again, dude, I got some conclusions from this. And what I said was here, a lot of these losses happened to unproven guys and girls that didn't have the cardio to go full 3 rounds, and we hadn't seen that. So that's interesting. And it's not only judges that are the ones causing these big upsets. It's guys with bad cardio and girls with bad cardio. I think that's something that's interesting to talk about there. So anyways, I think that's it for that. Let me go to do some fight announcements now. Marcel's page. He's not here today, obviously. We had Marcel on last week. Let me go to Marcel's page and see what we got here. Yeah, so these fights are official now. I just saw it this morning, the 3-fight other cards. So that's Poirier, McGregor, obviously, on the 23rd. Kamzat and Edwards, 20th, and then the 16th is Cater and Holloway. So this fight's official. We'll talk about this fight in a couple weeks. I can't wait to talk about this fight. This fight's great. Now, we'll talk about this one quickly. Devonte Smith versus Alex De Silva. Devonte Smith, man, this poor guy. I think his sister got murdered last year or this year, possibly. I think she was killed, right? So, I mean, this guy's had a rough time. And he's a guy that had that really bad loss last year to Conor Worthy. So, like, the last year's been just shit for this dude. Feel really bad for him, but he's a talented dude, Devonte Smith. He's a good friend with James, my boy. So I know that he's been on James' show and stuff. I really like Devonte Smith. And in this case, I think this is a good fight for him to come back to against Alex De Silva. This guy's not that great. He's I don't think he's been that impressive in the UFC. He's got some losses he should have had back and stuff. He's got a good record, but 1-2 in the UFC. I know Smith's tough to trust right now, coming off that huge upset loss, but I think he wins this fight. Randy Brown versus Alex Oliveira. I like this fight a lot too. Great fight. Randy Brown 6-4 in the UFC. Cowboy 11-7, 0-1 no contest. So he's had a lot of fights. This is his 20th fight. Wow, it's impressive. I mean, he's only been in the UFC for like 5 or 6 years. He fights all the time. Randy Brown's been in the UFC for a couple years too. I think 5 years now. Pretty close fight. I mean, Randy Brown is definitely got more upside, I think. He's a little bit younger. And we've seen at times some incredible performances like against Alves, Barberena, but fights like the Nico Price fight where he gets KO from his back. I mean, when he's on the ground, right? Like that's not something you want to see looking forward, especially against a guy like Oliveira that can finish people from different positions. So close fight. I could see it going either way, but yeah, it could go either way. Honestly, I have no idea what the odds. Now this one, we've already seen odds for this. Like it came out a few months ago. I think the line was taken down. It'll go back up. I expect Nunes to be, minus 800 to minus 1,000 in this fight. I don't really see a path to victory for Megan in this fight. Sorry to say. I mean, maybe a head kick. That'd be pretty much her only way of winning. I think she's going to get taken down and beaten up pretty easily in this fight. I just don't see her giving Amanda a tough test at all. And again, no huge disrespect to Megan Anderson here. I mean, she's one of the best featherweights in the world. I mean, she is. But Amanda's obviously just like way above everyone else. This fight's, it's kind of a joke fight, if you ask me. I think she'll just destroy her. There's a couple other fight announcements here that we're talking about for sure. Derek Minner versus Charles Rosa. I like this fight too. This is a fun one, man. Derek Minner coming off that great win over TJ Laramie. He looked amazing in that fight. Gets the first round win. Actually, he wasn't on the list, but he was number 16. He was plus 265. So he was number 16 when he beat Laramie. He just missed the top 15 there that I put. So Derek Minner was there. And this guy's got an incredible submission game, like one of the best. Rosa's also obviously good at submissions. And he's coming off a couple like decent performances here. This fight with Aguilar is a good performance by him, and the main Bermudez fight. I mean, this guy's solid, so it's a close fight. But Derek Minner with those submissions, man, he can easily get out roasted in the first round if he makes a mistake in the ground. So it's a close fight. But Rosa, more well-rounded guy, better cardio, should win the fight. But Minner, super dangerous in round one. I love this fight too. Rafael Santel versus Brownie Barcelos. Love this matchup. I talked a little bit last week, but yeah, I love this fight. Both guys are legitimate fighters. Santel 11-5 in the UFC. Barcelos 5-0. Barcelos deserves a step up. I remember last year when I went to that card in Brazil, he fought this guy named like Carlos Hoshan or something, and man, he beat the crap out of this dude. Like Barcelos, it was a vicious beating on the ground. So this guy is just like super. I've always liked him, man. So ever since I saw that, like, the way he finished that fight, he's a violent dude. Love his Santel. He's again tough guy to beat. Really good at weighing decisions and stuff, but man, Barcelos, I'm high on, guys. I really am. And then there's this fight too. Tagir Ulanbekov against Matthias Nicolau. It's a pretty fun fight as well. Nicolau is his girlfriend's fighting in the UFC now. She was just on Contender Series. Brazilian girl. She just won a few weeks ago. That's his girlfriend. So now I guess because she won, Dana White's giving him another chance. He was in the UFC a while ago with Matthias Nicolau, but he was 3-1. But he got caught for PEDs and he lost a few fights. He lost one fight actually. They cut him. So good to see this guy back. I mean, he's definitely good, but this is a tough fight, man. Tagir is good, and his first fight in the UFC against Bruno Silva was a dog fight, man. Great fight, and gets the win there. He'll probably be a big favorite there. I already covered those other fights last week. So there was a few other fights on my list, though, that I had that Marcel doesn't have yet official, I guess. They were announced yesterday. Santiago Ponzinibio would be one of them. He's fighting Li Jingliang. Let's look at Santiago. So he's 34 now, right? He's fought in 2 years. Like, look at his record. He's pretty damn good, right? Like, he's got some nice wins. Magny win, Mike Perry, Gunnar Nelson, but hasn't fought since November 2018. So that's a long time, guys. And he's a guy who had COVID. You've seen how many guys that had COVID have had issues winning fights. So I don't know. He's supposed to fight Mazin Salikov. He ironically gets his COVID, and then he's going to fight Li Jingliang now. So that's the fight, Li Jingliang against Santiago Ponzinibio. Li Jingliang was supposed to fight Dwight Grant. He got COVID. So all these guys tested positive for COVID. Now you get matchups like this, and Li is, he's 32, so he's right there too. But he's underrated, man. He actually has a 9-4 record in the UFC. He's super underrated. Ponzinibio, I think, is 9-2. So 9-2 versus 9-4. Love the matchup. I think Ponzinibio is a better fighter personally, but Jingliang is super underrated. He's got nice knockouts. The only problem is most of them are over guys that are not really in the UFC anymore. I guess his best win's the Santos. That was a great win for him, but I don't know. When he steps up again, I guess I'm not too sold on this guy. He is good, but mostly against like inferior competition. I think Ponzinibio will probably win this fight, if you had to ask me. He should be like a pretty decent favorite in that fight, like minus 250, something like that. I don't know. I know the layoff guys is scary, but he is the better fighter. And you look at this run he's on, it's nice. But again, over 2-year layoff, that's a long time. Another fight, Frankie Edgar versus Cory Sandhagen. So let's look at this one. Frankie Edgar. There is odd, though. I saw odds for this one at Eurobook. It was minus 230, Sandhagen plus 170, Frankie. And, Frankie's got a chance to win this fight, man. I mean, look at this fight with Munoz. I didn't think he won that fight. I thought he lost, but it was competitive. And for a guy who's 39, for his first fight at bantamweight, his cardio held up really nicely, going the full 5 rounds. I still question his chin a little bit, though. I mean, he's been knocked out a couple times the last few years, Ortega and Jung. So I'm a little bit worried about him. And Sandhagen's got power. He's got the kicks. We saw that against Moraes. Sandhagen's younger, too. Let's look at Cory. I love this kid. He's only 28, too. He's 11 years younger. I mean, that's a big age difference. I'm assuming his reach is longer. I'll have to check that. I will check that in a second. You look at his resume in the UFC. It's been impressive. 6-1 coming off the win of Moraes. I can see why he's the favorite here. I just think Frankie could win this fight. I should mention, right now it says the co-main event after Overeem and Volkov on that card on February 6th. So right now it's 3 rounds, but I could easily see this fight being switched to a 5-round fight and headlining another card. I think the 5 versus 3 rounds really does matter for this fight. If it's 5 rounds, I might take a shot at Frankie. 3 rounds, I'd have to go with Sandhagen, I think. But 5 rounds, I mean, look at Frankie's resume. Look how many times he's been 5 rounds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh, my God. He's been 5 rounds 11 times. Like, that's incredible. I think he actually might have the most, ring time in UFC history, cage time. And, yeah, Sandhagen's never been 5. So, again, right now it's 3 rounds. But I'm saying if it gets switched to 5, because that could easily happen, to me, that would be a fight that Frankie could win. I should mention also, I kind of disagree with Overeem and Volkov being the main event for that card right now, because let's be honest, guys, will those guys even need a full 5 rounds to get a finish? Probably not. I think that probably ends in the first or second round. So to me, it's kind of a mistake. I think Frankie and Sandhagen should be the main event. Now, there's one other fight to talk about really quickly. Nina Ansaroff will be taking on Mackenzie Dern. Let's pull up Ansaroff. Again, someone who hasn't fought in a long time. She's 35 years old now. Just had a kid with Amanda Nunes, had her first daughter, Reagan. And Nina's an underrated fighter. I mean, she has some nice wins, Gadea, Marcos. And her losses, except for this one, are all by decision. So she is tough. And we saw that fight with Tatiana. That was a close, competitive fight, man. It really was. And almost pulled it off in the end. If it was 5 rounds, you talk about 3 versus 5, she would have won that fight with 5 rounds. Like, we all saw that fight. So she's good. But again, she's 35 and she hasn't fought in over a year. A year and a half. So long layoff, man. And to me, that's an issue. especially against someone like Mackenzie Dern. And Mackenzie Dern is actually the perfect fighter to talk about when you're talking about layoff from pregnancy, because look at her. You know, she had a nice run. Everyone's talking about her as a contender. She gets pregnant. She has her first child, and she loses her first fight back against Rivas. Her cardio wasn't there. Her takedown defense wasn't there. Since then, won 3 straight fights. And she said that, you know, she needed that fight to get back into like fight shape. So, you know, for me, it's just like classic example of like kind of learning something from your opponent. And Ansaroff, I'm not saying she can't win this fight, because if she can keep it on the feet and keep it standing, she definitely could outstrike Dern. But I saw enough of Dern's boxing improvements against Shana Dobson, and we know her ground game is incredible, that I think she should be favored to win, even though obviously she's not even close to being ranked as high as Ansaroff is right now. She's number 11. I think Ansaroff's 5. So, you know, it's a classic case of prospect against a higher ranked fighter. But in this case, I think the prospect will be the higher fighter at the sportsbook. She'll be like minus 200 to 300 favorite, I would assume, in this fight. And if she isn't, she's going to be a steal of a price. I don't think she'll be more than that. We've seen her, for some reason, Dern still gets good lines. Like, we're still getting good lines against Janarova, and Marcos wasn't terrible either. So, like, she's still getting decent lines considering how dominant she's been. Straight wager. Dern's hard to beat. She's active. You put it all together. She had dog in there, too. I love her, man. I absolutely love Mackenzie Dern. I really do like her. Always liked her ground game, but, you know, the last fight with Janarova breaks her nose. She could have, you know, just kind of just threw it in the towel there, man. Just not wanting to fight in the 3rd round. And she goes in there and she put up a dog fight and she gets the win. And like you said, been active. 3 fights in 6 months. I like her a lot, man. I think she probably wins that fight against Ansaroff. All right, let's go to BJ Penn, look at some news, and then we'll get out of here. Probably don't know if I'm going to get to the full hour today, but I'm down to answer any questions. Throw them in here, guys, and I'll answer them. All right, close some ads here. Got to pay for our salaries, guys. That's how I get paid, so remember that. All right, so let's talk about a few things here. Now, this one I'll talk about quickly. Dana White, UFC released video response to those critical of the promotion holding events during pandemic. I kind of will talk about this one because it's media related, so it's pretty crazy, right? We all know that Dana White doesn't like the media. Dana White despises the media in many ways, especially MMA media. We've heard him talk crap about us all the time. Not really me. I don't think I have a problem with Dana. Like, yes, I am blocked on his Twitter, but that was from years ago. That was like 6 or 7 years ago when I was critical of, I think there was a pay-per-view that Mighty Mouse headlined against someone. I can't remember who it was. Maybe the one in Vancouver against Horiguchi. I was super critical online about Dana, UFC, and Mighty Mouse, and they both blocked me after that. I was like, this is not a pay-per-view quality card, guys. You can't be asking people to spend $60 on this, and they both blocked me. That was years ago, though. I am in the good books now, I think, not in the bad books. I'm not getting coal for Christmas from Dana, but he's not sending me a Christmas card either. Now, these dudes in this video, and some of them are my boys, man. Like my friend Kareem's, again, me and Kareem are friends, you know. I know Kareem's a controversial guy. We all know that, but I love Kareem. He's one of my good friends. So, you know, he's the first name they threw in this video. They threw shade at. Alex Lee's another guy I know in person. I'm not going to say we are close friends by any means, Alex at MMA Fighting, but I like Alex, and we've hung out in person before. He's a cool dude. I talk to him sometimes. Like, he's definitely a good guy, and he gets singled out as well. There's a couple other guys. A guy at CBS, Brian Campbell, he got singled out. You know, I'm not surprised. And also Josh Thompson, Big John. Not surprised. I mean, that's UFC throwing shade at CBS and Bellator, because Brian worked with Luke and they have that CBS combat show or whatever. So, you know, that's their thing. These guys are all, you know, here's the thing. When you play with the big boys, you're going to get burned at some points. And these guys, you know, you go out there and you call it Dana White, you call it UFC, you call it Zuffa, and you're critical about it. That is totally fine. And as a journalist, you should be doing that. As a journalist, you should be asking questions. At the same time, though, the UFC has proven that they're pretty safe in what they're doing. So, you know, a lot of these guys, you know, maybe their points at the time were valid, very valid, I'd say, especially in April when they want you that show on the Indian Reserve. That was just ridiculous, right? But I think over the last 6 months doing the events of Fight Island in Vegas, they've shown that UFC, they do, I think, they've done a good job. And I think in many ways have arguably done a better job than a sport like the NFL, where you've had like huge breakouts on teams like the Baltimore Ravens, and you've had guys like multiple guys on the same team test positive. Obviously, there's been positive tests in the UFC, especially lately. That's going to happen when you have guys flying from all around the world to Vegas or Fight Island. It's going to happen. It's not the safest thing, obviously. And, you know, a lot of these comments were, you know, the UFC's putting big business before health and safety. That's a fair, I think, thing to say. Having said that, it's not like the UFC is the only sport or the only business that's did the same thing. It's a business after all. And Dana White, basically, it's just him saying, I told you so. So again, all these guys in the video that he threw shade at, there's some great guys in there. Kareem is a great guy, man. I'm telling you, he's a misunderstood dude, man. I'm telling you right now, as someone who's been his friend for a long time, he's a bit misunderstood, and he's highly critical of Kadyrov and of some of these guys like Ali and all these guys and Dana. And I understand that, but that's what Kareem does, and he's the guy that asks the hard questions, and I respect him for that. But I knew Kareem before that. I knew Kareem when me and him hung out years ago, like 10 years ago. We would hang out and watch the fights, and just as fans, and just hang out. And it's different now. He lives in a different place in Canada now than I do. But he's still a great friend. And it was a little tough to see him get singled out there. I'm not surprised, obviously. It's not like the first time it's happened, but it just shows how petty the UFC can be too, though. I mean, it really does, right? Like they hold a grudge, man, and again, I'm not really on their bad books. I'm credentialed still. I'm still a credentialed media member. So I've been to events and they haven't said anything to me, thankfully. And I'm a guy who does speak the truth. I mean, you guys see me on Twitter. It's not like I hold back. There's just certain things that I think in some cases you need a bit more information on. In this case, I didn't know all the medical stuff. That's why I didn't say much about it. It's not like I agreed with it. I disagreed completely when they wanted to do the Tattoo Palace event. That was ridiculous. But, when they did the Florida event, I didn't necessarily agree with that one either. But when they started going back to Vegas and Fire Island and they showed all the testing protocols, you started to realize the UFC is doing it the right way. And, I'm not going to give Dana credit for being a jerk in this video because he was. He's being a bully as usual. But I'll give the UFC credit for running a pretty good show. And here's the other thing, and I got to mention this because, I think a lot of people that are critical of the UFC forget this sometimes. A lot of us wouldn't have a job if it wasn't for Dana and the Fertittas believing in the sport 20 years ago. And I'll always be grateful for those guys. Doesn't mean you can't criticize them. You can. But I'm always grateful for them for creating what we have as this amazing sport, the best sport in the world. And I'm very lucky able to cover this for a living. So it's nice. So I'll give Dana credit for that. But, he was a bully in this video. There's no doubt about it. I'm not condoning his behavior. Stupid video. I mean, it really is dumb. It's just them basically saying, the UFC is great and we made a bunch of money while they're cutting 60 fighters, while they're having career high revenues and profits, and they're cutting all these guys on the roster. It's kind of sickening, but it's a business. I get it. It's not just a sport, it's a business, sports entertainment. It just sucks that Kareem and Alex, two guys I really like, got singled out in this video. But and Josh Gross, another guy. But Josh has been in the UFC's banned list for years. Not like I'm sure Josh just laughed when he saw that. I mean, we already knew that he was on the bad list. He's on Dana's naughty list this winter. I think that's pretty funny. We'll call him Uncle Dana, right? How about Santa Dana goes in there? And anyways, I don't want to talk about it anymore. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens to those guys. I would assume anyone mentioned that article or that video, I would assume you won't see them at UFC events when they do have media coming back and fans coming back and stuff. This I saw last night. This is sick. You guys got to watch it. If you're a Diaz brothers fan like I am, you'll like to see this video. They were training, and they look good. Nick looks really good. He looks focused. I know Nick's had some problems, man, with drinking, and obviously they're both huge potheads, which I don't think is an issue at all. You guys know I'm pro marijuana, so no problem there. But the alcohol is something that, and I'm not saying I'm anti-alcohol. I'm sure most people listening to this podcast have a drink here and there, or maybe more than that. But when you're a professional fighter and trying to make a comeback, you got to cut down on stuff. It looks like he's super focused. He looked good. Nate looked good. I want to see this. I want to see them both come back. And a lot of fans want to see them fight the Paul brothers. That's not going to happen now, guys. But a few years down the road, it's possible. Definitely possible. Kevin, surprised UFC isn't put on 1 or 2 hour year-end award show on ESPN. I'm with you. This is something I've said in years, man. Hey, Kevin, how's it going, by the way? I'm with you, Kevin. Like, it's weird, right? Like, all the other sports have numerous awards, like award shows, and like baseball does an award during the early November. They do like a different award every day, and they have their MLB network. UFC has Fight Pass. Why can't they do a show there? Or ESPN, like you said, ESPN Plus. I'm with you completely. They should do an award show, best fight, best female fighter. And it doesn't have to happen in December. It could happen in January, February, or something. But I'm with you. I mean, why rely on fighters only? Why not do your own? It doesn't really make sense. UFC is such a big sport. You can't do an award show. I mean, that's pretty common, I think, in most sports. I'm with you on that one, Kevin. This is, Cole did this article, and I'm not throwing shade at Cole because, Ariel's the one who tweeted it, but I literally posted this article like 3 months ago from TMZ or 2 months ago. So it's not like this is news. This part's news, though. The winner expected to fight Jones from Stipe Francis because we thought maybe Jones would get a tune-up fight. So that part's news. But the first part, and again, this is not Cole. Ariel's the one who broke the news, but it's already TMZ reported 2 months ago. Dana White actually talked and said March. So we already know that it's going to be 259 most likely. But this part about the winner fighting Jones is interesting because you thought Jones might get a tune-up fight. I thought so. Looks like he's just going to step in the fire and get the winner if Francis and Stipe. And, Francis deserves this fight. Here's my question, though. What if it's a win for Francis in this fight and then it's a 1-1 in the trilogy? Do they do a trilogy fight? Just say it's a close fight and Francis wins a decision or something. Or maybe say Stipe's winning and Francis get the late knockout. I don't really know. Would they do a trilogy or Jones get that fight? I don't know. It's interesting, right? Rose responded to Dana. Actually, I read the response. I wrote the article. I better have read it. But you know what? She didn't say that much, I like Rose, too. I think she's another misunderstood person in the MMA community. I think the thing with Conor screwed her up a lot more than people realize. I think she's got some issues that she needs to take care of personally. I mean, she's been open about that. It's like I'm out there saying that as a jerk. She's been open about that stuff. In this case, though, she just said she wants to fight, but she didn't specifically say, I want to fight Wheelie. I want to fight her for the belt. She just said she's ready to fight. So I don't know. I mean, there might be something in what Dana said. She could have possibly said, I want to fight for the belt next. I want to tune-up fight or something. I don't know. I'd like to see Rose and Wheelie. I think that's the fight to make. We all agree with that, I would say. But I don't know, man. There's something to this. I think Dana White's – he's a little like when you get Dana's bad books, it's not good. He likes Rose, but I think in this case, something went on behind the scenes we're not seeing here. I'm not going to be surprised if they give it to Carla. And I think Weili Zhang should be like a minus 1,000 fight, minus 1,000 favorite in that fight if that happens. I don't see Zhang having any issues at all with Carla, especially with the takedown. I think she'll stop them all and then knock her out. It'd be like the Joanna fight. All right. This was interesting, too. Conor McGregor posted basically like a UFC sent him a letter, or Zuffa sent him a letter showing all the pay-per-views he sold. With Cowboy, it was like 1.353 or something million. And we thought before it was UFC 251. Masvidal Usman, there was at 1.33 million. So McGregor saying that they beat it out a little bit. Now, here's the thing. These numbers trickle in over the course of the year. So that's why we're seeing this number a little different than what was originally reported, which I think was 1.1 or 1.2. It definitely did over a million. We already knew that. But the question was it the biggest of the year or not? It looks like it is, which is pretty cool to see. McGregor is the biggest name in the sport. For Cowboy, that's why I think it's cool to see because, at this point, it looks like he's probably at the end of the road, right? He might get one more fight. He says he wants to fight lightweight one more time, but this is probably the last big payday of his career, so it couldn't happen to a better guy in Cowboy. I hope he got pay-per-view points with that, or at least something. But for McGregor, he just keeps raking it in. I will say this: Abe Cowboy, the manager of Masvidal, he went out there on social media and said that the numbers are not right, and the 251 still has a beat. So maybe we'll see Masvidal or Usman posting something on Twitter with their numbers. But right now, it looks like 246, biggest of the year, and if that holds, it would actually be the biggest one since Conor Habib, which I think did 2 million or something like that, close to 2 million. Kevin, I think Dana doesn't want Stipe or Rose to have belt just because they fight so infrequently. Yeah, he likes active guys. That's why I keep saying, people will disagree with you. I keep saying Kevin Holland's closer to a title shot, people think, because Dana White loves guys like that. They love guys that fight actively. I think maybe that's why they'll reward Carla with the fight as well, because she's been pretty active lately. So, they like fighters to fight. And same with heavyweights. Stipe, he's a guy who fights once a year at this point. Having said that, I think when you're the UFC heavyweight champion, when you're proven, he's probably the best heavyweight of all time, right? Like in the UFC, he's up there, right? Stipe. I think in his case, it's okay if he fights once a year, but if you are the UFC, you probably want to get that title defended twice. So they probably prefer it was Francis, who seems like he wants to fight more often, or even John Jones. But Jones is the guy who fights once or twice a year. Thought this was interesting. Aldo was talking about Dillashaw. He said it was just a mistake that he took the PEDs. It seems like he wants that fight. I'd like to see that fight. Like I said earlier in the show today, I'd watch that fight. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's definitely a possibility. Yeah, he looks good too. Submission underground. I don't watch the grappling stuff, but I know that Cerrone looked really good. And Bader won, so it's crazy because those are like rematches, but in grappling. Gomi's fighting a Ryzen. That's something worth mentioning quickly. There's a few other things. Yeah, Pettis talking about that. That's pretty much it, though, I think. Let me see if I forgot anything else. No, that's pretty much it. Now, okay, I got 5 minutes left. You guys have questions? Throw them in there, okay? Please throw them in there. Marcus wanted me to go through the cards of the year. I was planning on doing it with Cole today, but I couldn't, so I'm going to do it myself. He wanted me to go through all the cards and say how many of them were duds. He asked me this the other day. I'm going to do it for you right now, Marcus. Hopefully you can see this if you're listening. If not, I'm sure you'll see the replay. This was a pretty good card. This was a good card too, I think. Yeah, it's pretty solid. Some good wins on this one. Good finishes. 247 was a good card. This was a good card too. I mean, mostly they're good, right? They're pretty solid. This was a great card. This one was solid too. You know, the main event obviously ended some controversy. This card was good. That fight with Romero and as you told most disappointing fight of the year. That to me, that'd probably be up there. But this fight was best fight of the year. So you have the best fight of the year and one of the worst. It's just that's sport's funny. But yeah, this was a good card. Lee Oliveira. This is the last one before the break. This card, actually, Marcus, this might be a good pick because a lot of these fights in the prelims went the distance. You had, I think, this set a record if I'm not mistaken. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 fights in a row that went distance. There was a couple of finishes at the end that saved the card, but I'm not saying decisions are boring necessarily. But I think this was literally the first time UFC, and you did have a draw. But anyways, you had 9 fights that went distance, so that'd probably be in the short list. The last one for the break. This card was canceled. I mean, look at these cards that were canceled. This was rebooked. This fight never saw. Hermanson Weidman never saw that fight, guys. 249. This card was great. We were know about this one. Great card. A lot of cards. Smith to Share was a pretty good card. Overeem Harris. There were some good finishes on this card. It wasn't the best, but it was pretty good. Woodley Burns. Yeah, this was pretty good too. Nunes Spencer was a card. This was probably one of the weaker pay-per-views on paper, but it turned out to be okay because you had the Garbrandt knockout and the O'Malley knockout. So and the Sterling win. Actually, this card was pretty good. Heinisch knocked out Mearshart too. Not bad at all. You guys, was there any bad cards, guys? Maybe this card. Okay, this was a bad one. Ian Calvillo, right? Yeah. Oh yeah, this had some nice finishes on the prelims, but this main card was pretty bad. And the main event was just dragged on forever. So I wouldn't say it's the worst fight, but it's up there. It's probably in the bottom part of this Ian Calvillo card. Blades Volkov, another card. Dana White hated this card. There were so many decisions. I remember he hated this one on the main card. Poirier Hooker was great. No doubt about that. This was a really good card. 251. Cater Ige. This card had a lot of decisions, but actually was a pretty good card. Figueiredo Benavides was solid. Whitaker Till was good. Fight Island card. Long night, but a good card. Brunson Sabazian. This one was actually probably up there too. I mean, there's some nice finishes, but they only had 8 fights on the card. There was a lot of issues, so that's got to be up there. Go through this really quick. Olenek, Lewis was okay. 252 was a good card. Munoz Edgar was a great card. A lot of crazy upsets on that card. Smith Rakic was another card that wasn't that good. This one's, you know what? This is up there, Marcus. If you're there, this is definitely the bottom part. Like this main card was not very good. Overeem Sakai was decent. Not many fights though. 7 fights. Wow, that was a low card. Not bad. I mean, I think they're all pretty good. Like this card was good too. Adesanya was good. Homal Donner was, I think, solid. Yeah, it was pretty good. Sandhagen Moraes was. This had a lot of decisions on the early part, but the fights were good. So again, it just depends on how good the fights are. This card had some fights that weren't that great, but overall not bad. Gaethje and Khabib was great. This was a great card in Halloween, one of the better ones of the year. Santos Teixeira was good. Feller dos Santos was good. Honestly, I mean, there really isn't that many. Well, I guess this card's not amazing. This wasn't an amazing card. That would probably be in the bottom 5, but the main event saved it. This was good. This one wasn't great. It was okay. Hermanson Vittori. Man, it's nice to go through the year, right, guys? I just did the just rate, but this was good, and then this was good. So, whew, I can't even talk anymore. Jeez. Well, I got a minute left here, so I'll talk. I get to relax my voice. I'm going to get these comments I'm getting out here after. Straight wager, Tsuzuki and Hack Pratt. Great way to start the year. Love that fight. Love that guy, Tsuzuki, too. Daniel Edwards. Aldo should teach TJ to fight, how to throw out the piss sample right and call for. I mean, Aldo's been connected to PEDs his whole career, but he's never tested positive, so you can't say he's taken them. He's been tested a lot, too. Last thing, Kevin, you will have a press conference for Dustin Conor. I hope so. But, they used to do, like, media calls. I used to be on them when I worked at the Score. They'd have these, like, phone calls. I remember going on them. That was pretty cool. I remember one time I was on one, like, 8 or 9 years ago when Dan Henderson pulled out of that fight with John Jones, and Dana White called Greg Jackson a sport killer. I'm the one asking that question earlier. So I remember they used to do that. Maybe they'll do that phone call, but I don't know if they'll do it in person. Hopefully in Abu Dhabi, that'd be good, but not sure. Anyways, I got like 20 seconds here. So guys, follow me on Twitter at MMAOBDaily, bjpen.com, MMAOddsRater.com, odds.com, MMAratings.net. Check out all those places, guys, and please check out that top 10 upsets article. Be back on Thursday at 10 a.m. for the Christmas Eve episode of the MMAOB Daily Podcast. Appreciate all you guys in the chat, man. Love you guys, and I'll be back to Thursday, 10 a.m., one of the last ones of the year. Have a good one, guys. See you later. Bye.